Hello guys. Hope you guys very good. Welcome to our another new video. Today we will talk about the day computers almost started World War III. So let's start today. We trust computers with almost everything. They control airplanes. They manage power plants. They protect banks. They help governments make decisions. But there was a time when computers almost ended the world. Not in a movie, not in a science fiction story, but in real life. During the Cold War, computers were given a terrifying responsibility to warn humans of nuclear attack. And one day they got it wrong. To understand how this happened, we need to go back to a world filled with fear. After World War II, humanity entered the nuclear age. For the first time in history, humans had weapons powerful enough to destroy civilization itself. The United States and the Soviet Union became the two strongest nations on Earth. But instead of trusting each other, they feared each other. Both sides believed the other could attack at any moment. This fear created a dangerous idea. If nuclear missiles were launched, there would be only minutes to respond. No time to think. No time to confirm. No time to ask questions. So, governments turned to machines. Computers were faster than humans. They didn't panic. Followed rules perfectly, or so people believed. Massive early warning systems were built. Radar stations scanned the skies day and night. Satellites watched Earth from space. Computers analyzed signals nonstop. Their job was simple. If missiles were launched, sound the alarm immediately. This system was meant to protect humanity. But it also created a new danger. Because computers don't understand context. They don't understand fear. They don't understand consequences. They only understand data. And data can be wrong. At the height of the Cold War, tensions were extremely high. Both sides tested nuclear weapons constantly. Military exercises were common. Trust was almost zero. Every signal looked suspicious. Every radar blip looked like an attack. In this environment, even a small error could become deadly. And errors happen more often than people think. Clouds reflected radar waves. Weather confused sensors. Satellites mistook sunlight for missiles. Machines misunderstood harmless events. But the most dangerous part was not the error itself. It was how quickly humans were expected to react. When an alarm sounded, leaders had only minutes to decide. Was this real, or was it a mistake? If they waited too long and the attack was real, they would lose everything. If they reacted too fast and it was false, they would start nuclear war. This meant the fate of the world rested on machines and a few humans. Most people never knew this. They lived normal lives, went to work, sent children to school, watched television. Meanwhile, deep underground, officers sat in dark rooms staring at screens, waiting for the signal that could end humanity. Computers were trusted because humans were afraid of their own emotions. Leaders believed machines would remove doubt. But machines also removed common sense. During the Cold War, both the United States and the Soviet Union experienced multiple false alarms. Most were kept secret. Governments feared panic. They feared loss of control. They feared admitting how close the world came to destruction. One of the most dangerous false alarms happened late at night, when most of the world was asleep. A computer suddenly showed that nuclear missiles had been launched. Alarms went off. Screens flashed warnings. Procedures began automatically. According to the system, there was no doubt. The attack was real. At least, that's what the computer said. But this was only the beginning. Because what happened next would prove something terrifying, the greatest. Danger was not nuclear weapons. It was blind trust in machines. And in the next part of this story, we will see how one computer error, combined with fear and pressure, brought the world closer to nuclear war than most people will ever realize. When the Cold War was at its most dangerous point, computers were trusted more than ever. Leaders believed machines were faster, smarter, and less emotional than humans. But this trust would soon be tested. In the early days of nuclear warning systems, computers were still new. They were powerful for their time. But they were also limited. They could not think like humans. They could not question information. They could only react to what they were programmed to see. And sometimes they saw things that were not real. One night in the United States, warning systems suddenly detected what looked like a nuclear attack. Computer screens lit up. Alarms began to sound. According to the data, missiles had been launched toward America. Military officers rushed into action. Procedures were followed exactly as planned. Messages were prepared for the highest levels of government. Everything was happening fast. The system showed that multiple missiles were incoming. The computer believed this was a real attack. But something felt wrong. The number of missiles detected did not make sense. A real nuclear strike would involve hundreds of missiles, not just a few. Some officers hesitated. They questioned the data. Then, the truth was discovered. The computer had mistaken a natural event for a missile launch. Reflections in the atmosphere had confused the radar system. What looked like nuclear weapons were actually harmless signals. The alarm was false. The world had almost reacted to a computer mistake. This was not an isolated incident. False alarms happened again and again during the Cold War. In another case, a training tape was accidentally loaded into a real warning system. The computer believed the simulation was real. It reported a full-scale nuclear attack. For several terrifying minutes, military leaders believed the world was under attack. Fighter jets were scrambled. Command centers went into emergency mode. Nuclear forces were prepared. Only after careful checking did officials realize the system was reacting to a test. A simple human error had almost triggered disaster. These events revealed a dangerous truth. The systems designed to protect humanity were fragile. They depended on technology that could fail. They depended on humans who could make mistakes. And they depended on decisions made under extreme pressure. The most frightening part was how little time leaders had. From the moment a warning appeared, they had only minutes to decide. There was no chance to wait hours or days. Nuclear war moves faster than human thinking. This created an impossible situation. If leaders trusted the computer and it was wrong, the world would end. If they ignored the computer and it was right, the world would end. There was no safe option. This pressure affected everyone involved. Operators sat in dark rooms for long shifts, staring at screens. Every blip of light could mean the end of civilization. Every sound could be the start of war. Many lived with constant stress. Some developed anxiety. Others became numb. Yet they had to stay calm. Because panic could kill millions. As computers became more advanced, governments believed errors would disappear. But new technology brought new problems. Satellites were introduced to detect missile launches from space. They watched for heat signals rising from Earth. This seemed safer than radar. But satellites also made mistakes. Sunlight reflecting off clouds, seasonal changes, unexpected natural events. All of these could confuse sensors. And one night, the most dangerous false alarm of all would happen. A computer would report a nuclear attack that never existed. And one man would have to choose between trusting the machine or trusting his own judgment. That moment would decide the fate of the world. It was late at night. Most of the world was asleep. Families were resting. Cities were quiet. No one knew that in a small control room, the fate of humanity was about to be decided. Deep inside the Soviet Union, a nuclear early warning center was operating as usual. Computers were watching the skies. Satellites were scanning Earth for any sign of missile launches from the United States. Everything was calm. Then suddenly, alarms began to scream. Red lights flashed. Across the room, screens lit up with warnings. The computer reported that nuclear missiles had been launched from the United States. According to the system, this was not a drill. This was not a test. This was the real thing. The officers in the room froze. The computer showed that a missile was heading toward the Soviet Union. Then another. Then more. According to protocol, this information had to be reported immediately to top military leaders. If the confirmed, the Soviet Union would launch its own nuclear weapons. In response, This was how the system was designed. There was no room for debate, no room for delay. One man was in charge that night. His job was simple, but terrifying. If the computer showed an attack, he was supposed to report it. That report could start a nuclear war. He looked at the screen. The computer was confident. The system showed clear warnings. The alarms did not stop. But something felt wrong. The officer thought carefully. If the United States wanted to start a nuclear war, would it really launch only a few missiles? A real attack would involve hundreds of missiles at the same time. This did not make sense. The computer insisted the attack was real. But the man did not trust it. He knew the system was new. He knew it had flaws. He knew computers could make mistakes. And most importantly, he knew that once a report was made, there would be no turning back. So he made a decision that went against everything he was trained to do. He did not report the attack. Instead, he told his superiors that the warning was a system error. For several long minutes, was silent except for the alarms. Everyone waited. If the missiles were real, they would hit soon. If they were fake, the alarms would eventually stop. Those minutes felt like hours. Finally, the truth appeared. There were no missiles. There was no attack. The computer had made a mistake. The satellites had mistaken sunlight reflecting off clouds for missile launches. The world had almost ended because of light reflecting off clouds. The man had saved humanity by ignoring the computer. Instead of being praised, he was criticized. Instead of being rewarded, he was questioned. He had broken protocol. He had disobeyed orders. But years later, the truth became clear. If he had followed the rules exactly, nuclear war would likely have begun. Millions would have died within hours. Cities would have disappeared. History would have ended differently. Most people never heard his name. Most people never knew what happened that night. The world continued as if nothing had happened. But this was not the only time computers nearly caused disaster. Similar incidents happened in other countries. Radar systems misread signals. Satellites detected false launches. Computers reported attacks that never existed. Each time, human judgment prevented catastrophe. These moments showed something frightening. The most advanced weapons in history were being controlled by systems that could fail, and the final decision often depended on one tired human being in a quiet room. The Cold War was not just a conflict between nations. It was a battle between human judgment and machine certainty. Machines always sound confident. They do not doubt themselves. They do not feel fear. But that confidence can be dangerous. Because when machines are wrong, they are wrong without hesitation. This night proved that the world survived not because systems worked perfectly, but because a human chose to think. When the Cold War finally ended, many people believed the danger was over. The Soviet Union collapsed. Nuclear tensions reduced. Walls came down. Treaties were signed. The world felt safer. But the systems created during the Cold War never fully disappeared. Thousands of nuclear weapons still exist today. Many of them remain on high alert. Many are still connected to automated systems. And many decisions are still made in minutes. What changed is technology. Computers today are faster, more powerful, more complex. And now, artificial intelligence is being added to decision-making systems. This makes the lessons of the Cold War more important than ever. The Cold War taught us that technology does not equal wisdom. Computers can process data faster than humans, but they cannot understand meaning. They cannot understand intention. They cannot understand consequences. They only follow patterns. During the Cold War, computers mistook clouds for missiles. They mistook sunlight for nuclear attacks. They mistook simulations for reality. Today, systems are even more complex. Errors still happen. Software still fails. Data can still be wrong. The difference is speed. Mistakes now spread in seconds. Another lesson is about human responsibility. The world survived the Cold War not because machines worked perfectly, but because humans questioned them. People hesitated. People doubted. People chose not to act. Those moments of hesitation saved humanity. This tells us something important. Blind trust in technology is dangerous. Technology should assist humans, not replace judgment. Another lesson is about fear. Fear pushes people to act quickly. Fear removes patience. Fear creates mistakes. During the Cold War, fear made leaders believe the worst. It made every signal look like an attack. It made communication difficult. Fear almost destroyed the world. Today, fear still shapes decisions. Fear of enemies. Fear of losing power. Fear of being weaker than others. History shows that fear and power together create the most dangerous situations. Communication saved the world. More than once, hotlines were created between superpowers. Dialogues reduced misunderstandings. Trust slowly replaced panic. When communication stops, danger grows. The Cold War also reminds us that ordinary people matter. The world was saved not by presidents or generals, but by operators, officers, and individuals who chose to think. People with no fame, no power, no reward, just responsibility. This proves that history is shaped by small moments and human choices. The Cold War never officially became a nuclear war, but it came closer than most people will ever know. And most of those moments were hidden. Why? Because admitting the truth would mean admitting how fragile civilization really is. Even today, many documents remain classified. Many stories remain untold. But the lesson is clear. Weapons do not protect peace. Technology does not guarantee safety. Speed does not mean intelligence. Peace is protected by restraint, communication, and human judgment. As the world moves forward into an age of automation and artificial intelligence, we must remember the past, because the same mistake, trusting machines without question, could happen again. And next time, there may be someone willing to hesitate. The Cold War was not just a political conflict. It was a warning about fear, a warning about power, and a warning about trusting machines more than humanity. The world survived because people chose to think instead of react. That lesson still matters today. Thank you for watching Infinity Documentary. Here, we don't just tell history, we explain